6:05.
Yeah,
okay.
It is time. Okay, so you guys tonight, well, actually from last meeting, we kind of stayed on really long and we got to talking about all kinds of little things, and palmistry came up. And palmistry for me has been something that I just sort of knew how to do, which sounds really weird. Even when I tell people that, I'm uncomfortable saying it because it's just not science-based to say, I woke up one day knowing how to do this. It sounds absurd, but I can't explain it. And I've definitely tried to learn from books, other ways to do palmistry, but my knowledge wasn't, I didn't learn from a book. I just learned from touching people's hands and knowing things and saying stuff that for me felt like I was the biggest fabricator in the world. And then when it was true, I just learned to really trust that instinct of things to say and how to read hands. It didn't stop me from buying my one and only book on palmistry, which was published in 1982. I'm not saying that it's a resource for anybody, but if I ever have a question about things where I'm like, why did I say that? Why would I ended up telling a young mom that her child who's like 3 years old, like his lifeline is very short. You should watch him carefully. And, you know, he was the kind of kid that at 2 a.m. snuck out on his bike and just went riding around. So I lost a friend because I said that. So I had to look things up where I go like, am I wrong telling people what I see or think or feel? So the one book, if you guys ever want to look it up, it's the only book this chick wrote. Her name's Joyce Wilson. I know nothing of her. I just look, it has a lot of the pictures really in it. And I find that useful for different types of hands. And that's probably why it's a guide for me, so that I can see options. But now that it's 22 years later, I've seen a lot of hands. I've seen a lot of lines and shapes and things that are conflicting and things that are like, it makes absolute sense. So I just want to do an intro to palmistry tonight because palmistry is huge, and the only way to really learn it is to do it. And that takes bravery probably. If you do it with your friends or with people close to you and you just start to get to know lines, like I almost put on tonight's meetup, if you can have a person sitting next to you so that as we go through some stuff, you can compare two hands. That way you're not just looking at yours. Oh, it's hard to make that assignment for something if you're not comparing several hands together. So that's way more fun if you can get a couple hands. We tried it last week as far as like showing lines on the camera. So I'm still going to try to do that and make sure you guys can see some stuff between my mom's hands and my hands. But I'm just going to get right into it. Okay, first off, the most important thing when you want to read a palm is the connection that you actually make physically. You're going to get sensations or warmth or coldness, and that should probably be the first thing that you pick up when you touch someone, when you shake their hand. There's an impression left on you. It sounds weird or maybe egotistical, but don't stray away from that initial perception of that hand. It's real. It'll like trust that first and lead with that for a while. And if it's somebody you work with or something, I want you to try to like pick up on things they do that either confirm or negate that actual perception that you received. With that, the energy touch being the first thing. The second thing is really, really simple. And I'm going to use no real palmistry terms here. I'm going to use very, very simple language. So if you look this up in a book, this is not what things are called. They're what I call them. The softness or the squishiness of the hand, when you shake somebody's hand or when you're touching their hand, if their hand is very soft and squishy, this is a person who carries with them a lot of emotion, a lot of heart, passion. And this could go both ways, right? This is not a good or a bad energy or a positive or a negative energy. This is energy that's like, it's a lot of emotion. So you could find somebody who's really anger driven or easily provoked anger, and they have big, fat, squishy hands. And you can find people that have the really hard hands or like more calloused. And it doesn't mean that they're not emotional, but they don't show it and they don't lead with emotion. So they're going to be like that harder, I don't know, like shaking a board. I'm trying to think of the pictures that come to my mind when you grab people's hands that are very hard. But those are the things that right off the bat, you can start making an assumption about the character, because palmistry is not going to necessarily give you the absolute of life, death, marriage, kids, travel, success, but it is going to give you a feeling of the person's character. And you can build off of that feeling of character when you start to look at their lines. Okay, I feel like I went really fast, but I want to make sure. Does anybody have any questions about what I said so far? And how does everybody feel about their own hands? We got squishy hands or hard hands? We got, yeah, that's all I remember, right? If you shake your own hand, what kind of energy do you feel from yourself?
Dry hands.
Well, I definitely feel like I have softer hands, but I also know that I'm very emotional. So
Yeah. With us, we were in touch with things.
Yeah.
You know, the next time you get a chance to even, I scope out everybody's hands, people who serve me, the baristas, like cashiers, it doesn't matter. I look at everybody's hands. Sometimes that affects how I interact with them. Because if I see people who have really like plump hands, I'm like, hey, how are you today? Because I know that that's going to be reciprocated in energy, usually of the positive kind, but because they like emotions, if you bring a positive emotion around an emotional person, they'll switch to positive. Oh, Sarah. So we've got energy, when you feel it, squishiness or hardness. We're looking at emotional people leading with their heart versus people leading with their head more so. And the decisions that they're going to make are going to be more of the mental aspect. So that's a good way to balance out the hands. You either have an emotional heart hand or you have more of a less emotional head hand. Not really, that's the best way to describe it, but it's people who lead with their heads. So men, you can find more men are probably going to have the harder hands or the less squishy, not necessarily hard, but less squishy. And whereas a lot of the females are going to have, especially here around the thumb area, this part can get pretty squishy for women because this is all stress and anxiety. So you can find nice plump bases of your thumb, which has a name. It's not important, but this is where you can really tell if somebody's dealing with a lot or is over emotional. If this starts to swell, lots and lots of lines here, this is our stress and emotion. And you can see it right away when you look at somebody's hands when they're like moving. I'm trying to move mine. So having this, the thickness between, here's like the outer part of your hand versus when you go into this part and getting very thick and plump. Okay. I know I'm going to say a lot of information. So you guys, please raise your hand in the little thingy on Zoom that has the hand thing when you need me to stop and clarify or ask a question, because I'm just going to speak from the heart, I guess. The hand. I'm going to speak about the hand. All right. So once you've felt energy, you've decided, you know, are you dealing with a head person or a heart person? And you go from there on if they have a question on it, or they want to know what do you see about them when you're trying to read them or even reading yourself. Next is going to be the shapes of the hand in general. So this is an overall view of the hand, which is really hard to know until you've looked at a lot of palms. But I'm telling you, if you start looking at everybody's hands when you're out and about, you'll start noticing some really funky patterns happening that you're like, that doesn't look anything like mine. And you're going to first compare it against your own. And you're going to see like people with bigger knuckles, you know, that their knuckles are really bulked up and, you know, if it's arthritic or whatever, but you'll see people with super short, stubby little fingers, you know, the big palms. Like I was thinking
like a
Tony Robbins, like, you know, in that movie, Shallow Hal, he's like, your banana hands or something. It's so large. So as you start to observe people in their hand shapes and stuff, you'll get a feeling about that. Either record it, think about it, like just ponder it. Just take in all the observances of different hands that you can. Because until you really touch them, you don't know the energy that where they're at in their life at that point. You know, you can judge a hand by the look of it, but it's once you start actually interacting with the hand that you get really useful knowledge. So energy, squishiness, the shape of the hands, the funkier, probably the more, like, as in funky, I mean less balanced. So super short fingers, big palm. When things are not well balanced, you're going to have people who either have stunted growth in the material world, or you're going to have like stunted growth or overexertion in the emotional world. So you'll start to see that there's these combinations together. All right. Next, if people are missing fingers or a finger is like super bent or curvy or weird, I'm going to tell you what each finger signifies in the areas of our life. So the first one, which is a finger thumb, our thumb this is our social finger. And one of the tests or the things that I have people who I read for, the first thing I have them do is relax their hand and lay it down very flat on the table or wherever I'm reading them. And you just like lay it as natural and as flat as you can. People like to stretch their hand and kind of like, organize it thinking that it looks better in a certain way, but just ask them to be really relaxed, wiggle, tighten, and then lay it down. And when you're looking at the area between the thumb and the first finger, that angle is about how opened or closed off they are. So you lay your hand down, and for me, I call it a funnel, but that very small gap in between my first finger and my thumb is very narrow because I have trust issues or something. I don't just let people all in my life. I'm like, no. I need to know a lot about you and make sure that it's safe to accept you into my world, because once I do, I'll expose my whole soul to you. So I'm more leery about who I trust. Well, you'll find other people when they're ready to talk to you, their thumb is like wide open like this. Ask them to, readjust and lay it down. But if they're really a wide open thumb like that, they're friends with everybody. They want to know everyone. They're looking for as many social people in their circle as they can get. So that's the thumb for, like, just as it lays and seeing a hand, your thumb shows your social acceptance versus the funnel of unacceptance. That's not an official name. Again, these are my terms. The other thing with our thumbs is that you can find people who have hammer thumbs. So if you've got a hammer thumb that bends really nicely, like you've been pushing stamps all day, there's a good angle of that. This is people who let themselves get used often. We allow people to take advantage of us because we're very giving once we let them in our cone of acceptance. So when you find thumbs, or if you have a thumb like this yourself, that's what that means. And you can try to change it by limiting, who you let in, but just know that once you let people in, you're probably going to open yourself up to be used in some sort of way, or eventually feel that you've been used. And that's because you're so giving and so open, and we expect people to reciprocate that. And when they don't, we're going like, hey, what the hell? That would be a boundaries thing that then you have to tell them, like, hey, when I did these 5 things for you, maybe you didn't say thank you, or you didn't, whatever it was that you expected back. You have to tell people your expectations. And that's how you may never get rid of your hammer thumb. It may never change, but you can stop the emotional effects that it gives you as you deal with your hammer thumb. Okay, so with my mom, seeing her little hammer thumb too, yes, there are parts of ourselves that are super genetically influenced, but that are changeable. Yeah, so who do we think?
Totally, that describes me though.
Well, it describes me too. Yes. So who else would think that they have a hammer thumb for allowing people to use us past what we really wanted to happen? Usually it's in good intention.
Wood dweller, I see.
Oh, yes.
Veronica.
Oh my gosh, wood dweller, definitely.
Yeah.
That, and Laura, you look like you have a pretty straight thumb.
Laura, you do. You're not letting people do that.
And then Maggie's yours looks pretty good. Does it bend farther back or no? You're good. You're doing all right. James?
James is definitely.
James got the hammer thumb. He's a stamp pusher like us. Jessica's is pretty straight.
Jessica, yours looks pretty straight. Yeah.
And then Star, you've got the hammer thumb also. Yeah. And then Jen, did you want to show your thumb? Oh, Veronica, definitely. And yeah, Jen, so does yours pull back more? Yeah.
No, it's just one of them.
Just one. Okay. We're going to talk about hand differences then.
Yeah. So I don't know if that counts. That's my left.
It does count. It does count for that hand. So I'm going to talk about hand differences towards the end. I'm going to go through all the information and then do hand differences. But hammer thumb has plagued me because I know that anybody who knows that knows it. So I feel like it's a huge sign for me. Use me. Look, I like to be used. No, it's just much harder to get to know me. But all right. So moving on from our thumb, that's our social aspect. Oh, there is one thing that I read today, because you guys know I like to do a little bit of research. Did you know that most people with mental disorders of actual retardation, not in the funny way from middle school, but they are born with much shorter thumbs than normal. So I didn't know that. I didn't know that that was an actual thing, like science-based, that people who have mental retardations of the different varying kinds have shorter thumbs naturally. So I thought that was really interesting because that definitely affects their social interaction. So it being the social finger is awesome. Okay, next up on your palm or your hand is going to be your first finger. And we all know that with our first finger, we do this, or you, or whatever. So this finger is the power finger. Again, that's not what other palmistry people call it, but it's the easiest way to remember it. Like, this is your power finger. This tells you about the person's power, how they feel about their own personal power, maybe even how they use it, whether or not they're a good leader. So this would be leadership, if it's a boss. And the way that you want to compare your first finger is by putting up what I call the bad finger, of course, because it's the middle finger. But your middle finger is just your influences over all of your basic carnal needs and desires. You know, so this would represent things like lying or, you know, manipulating, being bad, too much lust, you know, just the general like bad stuff we do that we know better, or sometimes we don't know better and then we learn. But that's this finger. So a lot of these two and this one, they center around how they react with this middle finger. And what your middle finger looks like will tell you whether you're dealing with a super crooked person or somebody who's, you know, just normally a normal amount of bad, not an extra amount of bad. That's the best way to put it. So with your first finger, somebody who's going to be better at leadership, because I don't want to say good, but better at leadership or comfortable with leadership and being in control or in power or in the position to make decisions and lead people, they're going to have a very long first finger compared to all their other fingers. So with my first finger, especially being compared to, this is your artistic or creative finger, with your first finger being longer, this tells you a lot. Your middle finger should always be longer because we can never not be human. But there's these other skills that we can build in ourselves with, this is power and leadership, creativity and business. So with leadership, when you get somebody who has a pretty long first finger, you're looking at somebody who's a natural leader or who's grown their leadership skills. Now I have to tell you guys, I've been looking at my hand for 22 years. And way back when, my first finger used to be much shorter than my creative finger because I originally was just an artist. Like, I love to paint and clay and whatever, anything with artistic stuff. So before I went in the military, which I was in the Navy for 6 years, I really didn't try to be a leader of anything. I was like, no, I want to blend into the background and just, you know, follow and make everything really easy and do what I want on the outside. But when I went in the Navy, I really found that I was very good at leading people and teaching. And so I took on many roles that I didn't know that I would. I'll tell you what, my first finger grew and has really never shrunk again. So now I accept that about myself. And instead of thinking of myself as I wasn't born a leader, that I changed that, I do things that make me a more conscious leader as far as like always seeking to do better for the people that I'm in charge of rather than thinking about it as a power play for myself. So the straightness of our fingers tells us how in line we are with that finger position. So if this is the power and leadership finger and mine's pretty straight, all my fingers are pretty straight, you can find people who have very bent fingers. The tops of their fingers can bend over. This is when you get leaders and leadership people who are crooked. I mean, that's the easiest way to describe it because their finger of influence is leaning towards that finger that influences all of our badness, for lack of a better term. So that's what you're going to want to look at when you're looking at a power finger or any of the fingers. Where do they turn towards? Where are they curving at? And who are they curving towards? So if you've got your business finger that then curves towards your creative finger, well, I would say that you should probably do something in business that has your creative abilities. James, look how long your business finger is. Wow. Your pinky? You have nice squared off fingers. So with that, James would be more evenly, like if everybody looked at James's hand, he has a more even keel about his fingers where his energies are spread evenly. He hasn't decided on one thing more. But as you can tell with me, like my business finger looks like a midget. He's over here, help me. And all the other ones.
Well, I thought mine was pretty short too.
No, mine was pretty short. So it's something that I can grow or change about myself, which is, I probably should have mentioned this from the very beginning. As readers of anything, whether it's tarot or palms or whatever, we're messengers to deliver messages so that people can take the information and change something about themselves. So when I read somebody's palm, I don't go like, you're always going to be awful. I don't say it, or you're always going to be like good at this. No. This is where they're at in their life right now, and everything is changeable. Everything, like the fact that your hands can change is amazing to me. And I didn't believe it until my own did it after many years. But that's why we want to deliver the messages, to show them who they are now and have them come to terms with, what they're dealing with or what they're going through. Yes, Laura.
Two questions. First of all, does it matter if you use right or left hand? And
I can tell that now.
Okay, and I'm confused about the middle finger, what you called it, an influencer of.
I just call it the bad finger, honestly.
Yeah,
Like,
okay.
because
Like
it's
totally
super,
the bad finger.
Right.
it's just so simple to call it the bad finger. I think that, I don't even
It sounds
remember.
like it's our kind of lower level, lower elevated selves
It is.
where we're very selfish
Yes.
and, it's all about me.
It is.
That's what I got from
It
it.
is the
Really
things that are like the
hedonism.
self-centered,
Yeah.
me, I'll lie, cheat, and steal to get what I want. And so we carry that in us. We come here to fight that instinct to grow spiritually. So that's the thing that we're always fighting against and trying to be better than. And it's not a dominant finger, but it sits in the middle because it does affect everything. So the other, left and right. Okay. Depending on who you ask, left and right have different things. For me, and again, this is not from a book. This is like just what I've been saying that, I don't know how I know. The left hand is what we're doing right now. This is our life, how we're living it, the things that are influencing us. But then our right hand is what we hope to have achieved or accomplished. So we have this is the canvas that we painted while we were on the other side and what we thought we were going to do and change and hope for. And this is the canvas we're painting currently. Because there are fate and destiny lines in our hands, but again, it's changeable. And when you're looking at the two hands together, you can see that your hands look probably, your hands look probably pretty similar in shape, size, lines, where things fall, but there are differences. And as you get older or change yourself, they can become either more different or they can become more the same. So when I read really young people, their hands often look much more similar to each other versus when I read older people, they can have a big line in one hand, like a health line in one hand, that they didn't have when they came here. So say when you were planning your life on this side, you didn't decide that you were going to have an eating disorder, whether it was too little or too much. But you got here and family influences or stress, and then you learned that, and now you have an eating thing where you comfort eat. Well, that's going to create that health line in your hand to say, well, now you might be, type 2 diabetic your whole life because you took on something that you hadn't originally planned for. So when readers,
I have that.
a health line versus a non?
Yeah.
Hey.
Isn't that my health line
Yeah,
right
that's
there?
your health line, yeah.
And I don't have it in this hand.
Yeah. So I guess my mom's actually an example of that where, I love you. She's been a little overweight for,
I have to fight my weight. Oh my
Yes,
God, like my
yes.
whole freaking
whole
life.
life.
Yeah.
And so in her one hand, she
So
has-
here, I didn't come here to do that, but it happened here. So yeah,
I know
there's that.
Yeah.
And then there's Weight Watchers, which I'm doing. So hey, yay me. Gotta get control.
Nothing can be 100% when we come here. Like you can't come here and say your life's absolutely going to be that because we have the moment to end our life anytime we want. So there's always that free will. And people often ask me like, what part of this is free will and what part of it is destined? Well, there are things that you hope to come here and learn that are your lessons that you brought people into your circle within your lifetime to learn those lessons with or to help you through them. I mean, even the people who cause you pain are there so that you can get over that, hopefully, so that you can work through that. But there's other things that happen to us here physically that, we didn't plan for. We didn't know we were going to have to struggle through that. And That's why the two hands can vary. That's what you'll see the difference in. It's the same with money. Oh my gosh, the money lines. The hand.
I'm supposed to be rich. I've
There's
got
that.
two big hands on both hands. Like, where is the money? Where's the money?
When I see people with the M's, I was like, what happened to your money? You were supposed to be pretty well off here. Like, what did you do with it? Because especially if it's in both hands. But okay, so we jumped ahead a little bit, but that's the two-hand difference. Reading one or the other is not wrong. Comparing them together is, you can notice things about both of them, which should always strike a chord with whoever you're reading for, or when you're reading yourself. It should always be like, oh yeah, I see that a little. Maybe it's not 100% on some of the things, but it's like tendencies. Yes, I feel that. Okay, so your leadership finger, your bad finger, which I really give this guy no attention as far as the reading, unless it's super crooked one way or another. This is your creative finger. So and the way that you're comparing your fingers together, it's like looking at an entire picture. It's not really just focusing on like the one thing. Looking at where their energy is best spent. So for me, if somebody else was reading me, a long time ago, again, actually these two were even for the longest time. I had exactly the same first finger and power finger and creative finger. They were the same. I was like, I could do whatever I want. But as I grew to just lean more towards, I really like making decisions and having a plan and being the one in control. My Virgo side took over. My creative finger, I didn't give as much attention to my art or my painting or the clay or whatever. So my creative finger stayed in its short range, whereas my leadership and power finger grew. So when you're looking at your creative finger, there's a school calling.
Right on time.
Right on time. When you're looking at your creative finger or the creative finger of somebody else, if they have anything, scars, like I actually have, gosh, that one's so long ago now. When I was 17, I ripped the top of this one off playing a sport, probably because I don't play sports and I shouldn't have been playing sports. And I hurt the one skill I did have, which was art. I look at funny things like that in my life too, where when I have fingernails that break on certain fingers, like, ooh, oh, okay. I haven't had thumbnails in a long time because I don't have a lot of friends. If I started having more friends, I believe my thumbnails would get longer because that's a sign of like where your energy is going. So my first fingers are always super long because I'm always in charge of stuff. And the creative fingers are coming and going. It just depends. So any questions yet so far on that? I know it's a lot of information. I hope you guys are just plucking out things that pertain to you, hopefully. With the pinky fingers, this is your business finger. Now, one of the reasons why this is the smallest finger is because we don't need business to survive. This is not a necessity. We need to be creative and we need to lead ourselves somewhere. But business, like being in a workplace and earning money and things, that was not survival back in the day. Survival was hunting and gathering, growing stuff, so this finger is different for us as far as the evolution path, that not necessarily when you're reading it, it has maybe the biggest impact on the person you're reading to, because they want to know if they're going to be wealthy, if they're going to be successful, and that's all business finger stuff. But for spiritual growth and whatnot, your business finger doesn't have a lot of weight on that unless you let it take you away from your spiritual side. So having a short finger, the way that you can tell if somebody's business finger, the two things that I tell people about their business finger, that's the better way to put it. If you look at the way that your knuckles line up, so my knuckles line up for these three very straight and in a line. And I'm gonna ask James to see his in a second so we can compare. But see how my pinky finger knuckle drops? I mean, that's like a significant whole finger drop in the knuckle. And this means that going into business by myself is not a great idea. So this is where I lack, where here I have all these strong traits, I lack in the business by myself. I would need partnerships and, hit the stool. Partnerships and people to work with. So although I'm solitary in some ways, business should not be one of those ways that I'm solitary. So James, let me see yours, because you definitely had a nice squared up palm, if you don't mind. Yeah, so James' fingers the knuckles are way more in line than mine. Everybody can see that difference, right? Like the way that mine drops a lot and his are like very much in a line. So James could be in business for himself by himself and do totally fine. He has the energy. He came here with that thing that he could do if he wanted to. Does anybody else want to show their business finger? And it's pretty simple to see it so that you know. Yeah, Sarah, you're more like me too. And Veronica, will you put your hand just a tiny bit closer? Yeah, so yours drops a little bit, not as much, but yours drops. And Jen, you have a nice just staircase down. It doesn't drop. You've got the slow movement of it going down. And Laura, yours drops too. Yeah, it's so funny. And Maggie, yours drops like mine. It's very interesting how we have a lot of similarities in our hands, and we're interested in the same things.
Mine too. Mine drops.
Cicely, put your fingers all the way together for me, hon. There you go. Yeah. So with I can definitely tell on your left hand that your pinky drops a lot like this. That crease right there kind of lets you know that there's a pinky's falling off. He's like, you don't need me. I'll go somewhere else. Okay, so those are our finger representations. Because it's easiest and we're on our fingers, if you flip to the other side, this isn't as much of a reading, but this is probably the part of our hands that we see of strangers the most, or they might see of us. We're not really like this with each other. We're in interactions where the top of our hands are showing. When you see people with nails that are acrylic, so acrylic nails, first off, would be hiding something about yourself that you don't want people to know. So sorry, Maggie. Acrylic nails, like, there's just something about themselves, and this is not good nor bad. This is just something about themselves that they would like to keep private, and they don't want people to know, and this is the cloak they wear. So that's what those nails are. Nails that are really, really bitten down are going to be insecurities. These are people who are really struggling with liking themselves when they bite their nails way down. Natural nails, like without polish, when you have a natural nail, but they're all different shapes and sizes, like, lengths or whatever, those people are in a serious debate with who they want to be. That is like, I don't know who I am. They've got energies coming from different places and they're never even. So it's like too much energy this way, that way. Think about the nails coming out like the energy that we're emitting and people can see, feel, or read. And then painted nails or half painted nails like mine, because I put it on and then I don't keep it up. I just let it wear off randomly. These are people who often spread their energies too thin. So you've just got good energies, but spread too thin. So it's like you do nothing well. What is that saying, where like, you could do one thing well, but instead you spread your energy thin, so everything only gets a little bit of your time, so nothing is really done well. I like to spread my energy thin, keep things interesting, never do quite the best job I can. All right, then it's the shapes. So now if you turn your fingers like this, you've got finger shapes that are pretty important for sex. If anybody needs to earmuff themselves, I understand, but the way that you are with your partners in sex would be displayed by the shape of the actual fingernail. Let me get closer. Okay, so however much of a rainbow you have. So depending on your rainbow is how bendable you are in bed to somebody else's needs. That's the best way to put it. The flatness of the nail it can be two things. Unsure of what they want, unsure of what you want, or unsure. Like, there's lacking in either knowledge, practice, or reading somebody else. So you'll find people with like harder hands will have the flatter nails because they don't know how to pick up on emotion. They need you to give them a list of what you're going to do in bed that night, and then they can follow that 100%. It'll be great. But for the feeling and just the knowing with the passion, it's going to be the more curvature you have, the more passion you can have. The one thing that makes a huge difference here, which I've only seen a couple times, is the finger drop. Okay. So on our little fingers, we have like the balls of this part here, the roundness of it. You can have people who have really like, I'm calling it balls, but that's not necessarily the right way to say it. But you can almost like tap it together and it has a point or a nice solid little chunk of tissue that's right at the tips of your fingers, that is also somebody who's extremely sensual. So say they don't know how to read your body language, they don't think with their emotions, but they're very sensual. So they can do the mirroring thing. Like, so whatever you do to them, they're going to do back to you. So that's the sensuality thing. This is also learning by doing and not by reading. So this is people with a lot of the tissue at the tips of their fingers. They like to do stuff, not just sit around and learn how to do it. They want to actually do it to learn. Yeah, on the job, learning. Yes.
Could you
Yeah.
go over that again? I didn't get that part again.
The ball part.
Yeah, tell me again.
Yeah. So when you have this, like, I can actually pinch mine and make it come down to a little point. And that's because I'm more of a hands-on person. So for me, it definitely fits that you've got this meatier side of your finger, and you can find people with very flat, I mean, very flat fingers. It's different. That's why I say observe, observe. But this meatier part of your finger, when you find people like that, this is passion. This would be like doing to learn instead of reading a book to learn. This is with intimacy. It's the reflection of passion. So what I was saying about the flat fingers, if you have somebody who is really they're a head person, they think with their head more than their emotions, right? The harder hand, the flatter fingers. If they have that little tissue at the bottom, they're still going to be able to be sensual or passionate physically. It's not like with the head person, I make a joke about, you know, give them an agenda of the things that need to happen in the bedroom tonight, and they can follow it to a T and do everything. But if you ask them to just go with it or to like see what happens, they're going, I don't know what that means. Explain that to me. What does that look like? They don't know because it's not a feel thing for them. They're analyzing, right? They're like in their head a lot rather than the emotion side. So those are your fingers. That is the best I can give you for your fingers. What, if you guys have anything on your own fingers that you want to ask me about, you can definitely, okay, bye, Cicely. You can definitely ask me now, because then I'm going to move on to the lines of the hand. And this gets a little bit more in depth. And I'm not going to say hard to follow, but I'm only going over 3 lines tonight. There's a lot of lines, but the 3 big lines and absence of lines for sure for you guys. Okay. The very first line that you'll find on every single person's hand, not an option, is the lifeline. Your lifeline is going to be the line that starts somewhere in here, and it curves around your thumb. So for mine starts up high with what I call the family line, and it curves all the way down to here. Trying to get like a decent look on it. That's kind of good. Okay, so this is my lifeline. There's 2 important things that I tell people when I look at their lifeline. How their health, like how healthy they would be, or their vibrancy, their vitality, that's the word, vitality. When you have somebody who has a nice deep lifeline, they have a lot of physical vitality. So these are people who can physically do a lot, right? And then people who have very thin, like faint, you couldn't feel it if you rubbed over it. These are people who would be more sickly or possibly have physical issues medically for their health. So those are the 2 things you can notice about your lifeline, how deep and thick it is. The deeper and thicker it is, the more vitality you have, like conquer the world, be in an army, fight people, be a boxer, a runner, you know, swim across the English Channel, something like that. Like it's going to be the force, the life force behind you. And the softer that the line gets, the softer that life force is. Then towards the end here, there are many ways for the lifeline to end. And this often signifies our deaths. And I usually only give people 2 options for death. Quick and out, long and slow. If your lifeline, as you look at it fade off, if it fades into your palm or into the wrist part of you, and it just kind of disappears, like a river running dry, that's health complications. That's a longer, slow, your life force drains out of you as you die. So that's usually always a health thing that happens to you. When you have a split, like I do, I have a little fork.
Can't hear.
What was it?
There we go. Oh, no.
We still can hear you. Can't.
Now,
Yeah, I think so. No.
Nope.
It was just low and then it went away completely.
Can anybody else hear? I can't hear.
I can
No.
hear everyone except for Jamie.
Yes.
Yeah, same.
Back.
So who's not allowed to hear about the forks because somebody's stopping this? These spirit guides are not allowing us to hear.
Must be break time.
Mercury retrograde.
Yes, I just heard something. No, maybe it was somebody else. It's just really low, but it's there now.
that's for them, which really sucks.
That's it. I can hear you now.
What?
Wait,
Oh.
what? When I turned you guys down?
Yes. I can hear now.
Oh my gosh.
What?
Who
did you
else can
do?
hear?
I can hear you now.
So weird. All right. Well, I turned you guys all the way down.
Okay, I unmuted.
That's so odd. Okay, so we can hear again.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can hear?
For the
Yes, let's talk about the forks, because I have one.
Fork.
Okay.
Quick death. Body and soul separate fast.
Oh.
I have it too. I'm sorry, I couldn't give you better news.
Well, do you want a long, slow?
Does it depend on which hand?
Yeah, my right hand has like a long line. My left hand is like a quick, it has like a 3-pronged fork in it.
Same. Oh no, there she goes.
Yeah, turn us down.
I know, I don't understand.
Well,
I don't understand that.
Here,
The volume
the
thing.
volume thing.
Yeah, but it's not
It
the.
works now.
It's working again? A little bit? Yes? Okay. Jeez. All right, I'm gonna.
Don't touch the
Hold
computer.
on, wait, I gotta take a minute because obviously somebody needs to be acknowledged. Listen, guys, spirits, team of light, whoever's trying to help me out here, just trying to do some good. Not sure who you're trying to block a message for. This is
I
not
feel like that's
a
me.
message. Oh my goodness. Okay, if you know that it could be health related versus quick death, don't dwell on it. Whatever you do, don't dwell on it, okay? I have thought about my own death ever since I realized I would die quickly, and I've always envisioned a car accident. I'm probably going to make myself die in a car accident because I think about it all the time. You draw that to you. So whatever you can do to release the knowing of it.